Coping with Tre Tailor, giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life, because we'll always be coping with something. Coping. Hey there, I'm Tre Tailor, and you're watching Coping, hosted by me, Tre Tailor. We're giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life, because we will always be coping with something. Something we are still coping with is dealing with tragedy, teen violence, and guns in our community. We are re-airing 2 shows today and tomorrow that discuss those issues specifically. How to deal with tragedy, how to talk to your kids, that's tomorrow. And then today, gun violence in our community. Hopefully you'll listen, learn, and continue to cope. I'm Tre Tailor. Thanks for watching. So I want to start with you, Perry. Why do you think there's such an increase in gun violence?
Our society has changed. We're just coming out of a pandemic, and a lot of people are trying to cope with what they've had to deal with during that pandemic. So when you have issues that, we constantly go over again, such as financial instabilities, those are the type of things that lead to gun violence. So we have to figure out ways to cope or actually counteract those things that have happened during the pandemic in order for us to actually achieve success in fighting gun violence.
Right. So you are, you think it's the increase is because of the pandemic. Is that what you're saying, Perry?
Well, I'm saying coming out of the pandemic, we have to give our youth something to do. And I don't mind causes a lot of damage. And I think that's where we are right now. There's so much stuff that leads up to gun violence. People think that it's just about guns, but you have to look at what's the leading cause of the gun violence in the first place.
Absolutely. Jacquetta, I want to get you in the conversation. Thank you again so much for joining us. What do you think is the problem? Why is it such an increase in gun violence? And listen, it's not, like I said in the opening, it's not just locally, it's nationally.
It is nationally, Trey. I think that our society has been victims, so to speak, with COVID. I think COVID had us locked down. COVID has taken away our ability to socialize in such a way that we are cordial. We are now more aggressive. I see it everywhere. And I think that our children, those who are committing these acts of violence through gun violence, I think that they are probably some victims of COVID. They're having to deal with COVID, the mental effect that COVID had on all of us. I think that has something to do with it. So, and they're in tune with social media, not just in tune with social media, but the influence of social media has a strong impact on those babies, or those children, or those grown people that are committing these crimes, that so much that they just act out in a way and they're not getting the help. They're not coping. This is their way of dealing with it and not knowing how to socialize properly, so to speak. I see Dr. Aaron Bishop says social, emotional. That's exactly the issue. They've lost their sense of socialization. The only socialization they got was from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Soray, I want to get you in here for a minute, but since I want to ask Jennifer, because Dr. Bishop also says it's also a spiritual issue. So Dr. Jennifer Bishop, let me ask you, what do you think about that? Social, emotional, Jacquetta both, and Perry and Dr. Bishop, your husband, has said social and emotional, but he also said spiritual. So what is the spiritual issue? How does spirituality play into our increase in gun violence in our communities?
Trey, we've lost the village mentality. We've lost the village component. From the spiritual aspect, the church was a central part of how we got our legs up under us and how we were able to make strides when we were making the substantive changes that we needed to across this nation. And so now, for whatever reason, things have shifted in a direction that we are not able to handle. Our children are able to handle it. As adults, we have not been successfully handling it. So what do we do to bring the current of change back into a place where our children can see us be adults? We have tried to be their friends, and that friendship has turned them down a direction that we shouldn't have gone. So that village mentality that we lost, that we set aside because I didn't want you saying anything wrong to my child, and I didn't want you to do this and this crab in a barrel mentality and all these other factors that came into play. It changed the dynamic of who we were when we had a purpose as to where we were going. Wow. So we must reset. We must come back and be a collaborative force to make sure that the changes we need to see, that we must see in order for our community to move in the direction. And y'all, this is beyond our community at this point. It's not just about us on Monticello Road, Two Notch Road over here. This has become an epidemic.
Right.
It is, a pandemic hits globally, an epidemic hits in a region. It has hit the United States in a way that other nations are looking at us and saying, what in the world is going on in the United States of America, when it doesn't happen like this in other countries? So this epidemic has to be controlled, and we have to do it collaboratively. There is no other way that it's going to happen.
I want to ask, you guys are talking a lot about the kids, the environment, our communities. So do you think accessibility to guns has any is any reason for why this is going on also?
Definitely, it does. So one of the biggest things I could tell you is, at some point, we as a society started buying more guns, as we call it, for self-defense, home defense, or whatever. But we never took the time to learn how to properly, as a whole, store our weapons, responsible gun ownership. So what has happened is the kids, when they're going and breaking into these cars and going through these houses, they're getting free weapons. They're getting free guns. And so the more guns we've purchased for home defense, the more guns are out there available for them to steal. And the majority of the guns that are out in the streets right now are guns that have been stolen or sold, in the black market.
I'm probably going to get some backlash for this because it's probably not politically correct, but it is what it is. A lot of it is intentional. A lot of it is intentional in terms of these gun laws. The government knows who's taking these guns. The government also knows who's causing the crimes. They're not putting restraints on being able to carry. In fact, in South Carolina, all can carry. So that's just my 3 cents. And if we're not careful as a people of color, we're going to kill each other. That's
Tre,
I stand by that.
Tre, can I add something?
Yes, please, Jen.
One from the civil rights movement, and I'm sure we all remember or we know about Emmett Till. And one thing that his mother did that was a transformative portion of the movement was that she displayed her son's brutalized body. She said that I want the world to see what they did to my baby.
Right.
And perhaps the savagery, the devastation that those bullets do to our children has not been seen enough. It's a shame that these children from Uvalde will have to always remember that for the rest of their lives. But the legislators, the persons who are making the decisions to keep these guns freely in our children's hands, the ones who are making the decisions that are impacting us on the ground, perhaps they have not seen the devastation that is done to recognize that this is something that is ingrained in our children's head that does not leave, whether it be the shooter, whether it be the victim. We have got to do something. We have to have this courageousness that Mamie Till had to say, you have to see what you have done.
Right.
And whether you pull the trigger or you were an accomplice by the fact that you did not make the legislative decisions, you did not stop the pieces that needed to be stopped so that this carnage can end. There has to be some hands-on parts to it. Imagery is what changes people's mindset. When you saw the devastation, that's when you said something. That's when your body, your mind had a reaction to it. Words are just words at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are scared to go into a grocery store.
What is the church's responsibility? Jennifer, you mentioned the church a little bit earlier on. Let's talk about church, and then Perry, I want to go to you about law enforcement.
The church is a critical component. It has always been the heartbeat, has always been the central component of our community. And we have deviated from that for whatever reason. And I think that if we reflect back to when the deviation happened, we may see the time period in which our trajectory in a certain direction also went in a direction that we want to have a course correction from. So the church is central. Within the church, we're supposed to commune together. That's where we come together as a community under an understanding of how do we build? Where do we go? How do we motivate? How do we train? That's what the church was about, beyond the spiritual component, because we're gonna talk about Jesus. We're going to talk about the scriptures. We're also going to equip you to go out and do what needs to be done so that our community can be all they can be. So if we don't have that component, which is lacking in a lot of areas, we will continue to have the carnage that we're having. So we have to get back to basics and go forth as a youth.
Perry, before I get to you, I want to ask you, Jacquetta, so to Jennifer's point, so does that mean what? The church needs to go beyond the four-wall ministry and go out and church in the community, bring the kids in or bring the people in? What does that look like, do you think?
Tre, she's absolutely right in terms of the church has got to be active. But if we're honest with ourselves, the church has changed. The look of the church doesn't look the same way it did 3 years ago, 5 years ago. As social media becomes more part of what we do on a daily basis, people are not even really going to a physical, brick and mortar building for church. They're doing it by way of virtually or, social media. Some may not even go. And considering we're trying to get out of COVID or get over that, most people didn't even go to church for almost 3 years. So we have clearly lost church. We lost the value. We've lost those foundations. But I'm not even sure if the foundation will ever be the same again, considering church looks different now than it did a year ago, 2 years ago. I know that my church, Brookland Baptist, now has Brookland Beyond. It's a whole different world, a virtual world out there that most people are not even aware of at this point, but it's a virtual church. So I think we've got to be creative in our approach and be a little innovative in terms to how we get back to the foundation. We need that foundation, but it has been lost over the last few years. So I'm not so certain what that looks like, but I know it's going to take everybody. It's going to take all of us putting our heads together and coming up with some creative way to get the foundation back to where it was. Or just, we have to embrace this new way of doing things in terms of how our kids interact and what they're exposed to. But we got to somehow or another infuse a little bit of our old ways, of those traditions. The foundation is what Jennifer was talking about. We got to figure out how to get some of that back in there, because I'm afraid that if we try to just say, okay, scrap everything y'all doing, let's just go back to the old way of doing things, I'm afraid that we're going to have a lot of resistance and then we won't get anywhere.
Tell us how you feel you are getting supported from law enforcement, and if they are making the right moves.
Well, everything we do, we partner with law enforcement and trying to make sure that our community gains that trust back in law enforcement. And so teaming up with the mayor, teaming up with law enforcement, those are the things that you need. People don't realize that, but unless everyone works together, it's not going to happen. That picture you just showing, that's what collaboration looks like. Not just BBC, not just law enforcement, but everyone together. And so law enforcement, they are making the right moves. I don't know if you realize that Sheriff Lott just made a pledge back to the community that says we're going to uphold the vows that we took when we first became deputies. And so that is so important, because building that trust back in our community is so important. And at the end of the day, one of the things that law enforcement would tell you, they can't do it alone. They can respond to 911 calls. They can react to what has happened, but it takes us, that village, being proactive. And the key part of that is being pro. Anytime you put pro in front of something, that's positive. So when we are proactive versus reactive, we accomplish a lot more.
Because I think sometimes we think it's a type of person that gets targeted. You know what I mean? It's easy for us to say they came from this situation or their parents did or didn't do this, but a bullet has no name.
And can I tell you what Soray did tell me? And she can speak to this, but she told me, she said she was the mother who had all of the children at her house. For me, it makes it feel safe. I'm safe when I feel like all the children are in one place and I can keep my eyes on them. She was that parent that had all the children coming over to her house, and she had no idea that her son would end up someplace that she knew nothing about. So she was not, so it's not, a bullet doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a socioeconomic status. It doesn't have anything other than if any of us can be affected by it.
Like you said, girl, I mean, these kids that went to school that day, who would have thought we could go to the grocery store? You could go to the grocery store. Aaron said he grew up in that same community. So it is beyond. And Soray said in the private chat, she said she thought that too, that it could happen to us. It cannot possibly happen to me because I'm making all the right choices.
Right.
And that's what we need to do. Stop thinking this can only happen to somebody else. People continue to say that, and it continues to happen. So again, thank all of you for leading the charge in our community, in our state, in our nation to do something about it. It's so easy to sit at the barbershop or at the beauty salon and talk about it, but we got to be about it. Perry, you wanted to chime in?
Yes, I want. One of the biggest things I don't talk about a lot is how important and impactful gun violence is. When I was a child, playing at my grandmother's house, I'll never forget, a family member left a loaded gun out. I picked up that gun and played with it and was actually shot with that same gun. And, and
it's
just
personal for you.
Yeah, it's personal. And, I come from a family of educators. My mom was a teacher. My grandma was a teacher. My great aunt was a teacher. My cousins a teacher. So like you said, it doesn't matter what side of the track you grew up on. It doesn't matter where you're from. It can happen to anyone, and it happens in an instance. And it's very, very scary and very emotional. And people have no idea how scary, how loud, especially as a child, a gun going off and then actually being hit by a bullet actually is. And so, I thank God every day for people that were mentors, that were counselors, the doctors and everything else, because at the end of the day, these are what's needed for us to get past this.
Yeah.
And Trey, can I add something?
Yes.
Two things. One, taking a step back. When we talked about the church and the important role that the church plays, as a woman of faith, I want everyone who's on the sound of my voice who will hear this recording to understand that it's not just the four walls at an address. We are the church. The four of us sitting here, Soray, everyone is listening. They are the church. I can count the times on my hand probably that Jesus actually went into the synagogue. He went around. He was amongst. And so if we are the church and we take that initiative, that desire we have to see a better community, to be a better community, then we can share that feeling and we can give it. So we must be what we want to see. We must give what we want to have given back to us. So there's an accountability on us to be the change agents, to give the course correction that needs to happen. And then the other piece was when Dr. Jacquetta called me and told me about this important initiative. I told her absolutely yes, because I love Jacquetta and I believe in what she does. But I also shared with her, I said, Jacquetta, I pray a lot. We all been praying. But faith without works is dead.
Yes.
And so what do we do after we come off 10 o'clock? I need to be able to tell someone, this is how you go and vote. This is how you need to understand the laws. Where are these guns coming from? How do we educate our children? Why are our children so quick to pick up these weapons? What has happened socially? Because in my son, first off, I own a child care center, and why am I having to do active shooter drills with the 3-year-old is a problem in itself. But number two, when in my age, we didn't pick up guns. We had fisticuffs. We did something different to express how we felt. But now it's not like that. So what do we need to do? Are we having conversations with these children that are picking up guns?
Right.
Those are the kind of things that Dr. Jacquetta and I talked about when she first shared her vision for this day. And so I think that was Love McCray. If I said her name correctly, I apologize. But yes, that part, working with Perry and whoever else we need to work with.
That's right.
What happens after we pray? What happens after we march? Where are we marching to? Who are we talking to? That has to take place. Otherwise, we're going in circles.
Computers, they're a part of our everyday lives. But when they're not working, they're an everyday problem. So call Computers Unique, your everyday solution. 803-351-5821. Is your computer running slow? Won't turn on? Do you need a screen replaced? Or maybe you just need another computer? Well, Computers Unique is your one-stop shop for all your computer needs. They have a wide variety of new and pre-owned PCs, Macs, and tablets. So call Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. 803-351-5821. 803-351-5821.
Hey there, thank you so much for joining us on Coping. I'm Tre Tailor. We're giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life, because we will always be coping with something. Hey, before I leave, I want to share this devotional with you. This is from Conversations with God. It's from Cheryl Mims Williams with Agape Counseling and Training Services in Columbia, South Carolina. This is such a great book. It includes some of her prayers, some of her diary readings, and devotionals. This one says, "Trust me, my child. I know you're having a hard time praying, studying, and focusing on me. I know you don't like the way this feels. You can't rely on your feelings." That's good. This is about knowing, being faithful, and holding on. Knowing even if you don't feel or see it. Isn't that such a wonderful reminder that God is with us always, even if we don't feel it, see it, or hear it? We've got to know it. That's what faith is all about. It's from Cheryl Mims Williams from Agape Counseling and Training Services. This is called Conversations with God. I'm Tre Tailor. Thank you so much for joining us on Coping. We're giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life, because we will always be coping with something. The good thing about it is that we're never alone. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Coping, find peace of mind to survive through whatever. Coping, learning the way that we thrive all together. Coping, finding out what's real. Coping, we can heal, we can heal, we can heal. Coping with stress, coping with strife, bringing hope for success, for improving our life. Coping beyond hoping to do more than survive. Ways to live a healthy life. Coping and promoting, learning what you can do. 6 ways to a better you. Coping, find peace of mind to survive